We live in a world increasingly obsessed with pleasure. It's woven into the fabric of modern life. Pleasure, distraction, consumption. From the moment we wake up, we're bombarded with constant stimuli designed to keep us entertained, comfortable, and always seeking more. But what does all this pursuit of pleasure mean for our minds and our freedom? Most people today aren't living, they're existing in a state of distraction. The essence of human experience has been reduced to momentary pleasure, fleeting gratification that we chase from one experience to the next. We've been conditioned to believe that happiness lies in the pursuit of pleasure, but in reality, this chase is what chains us, not liberates us. True freedom, the kind that allows us to live with intention, depth, and purpose, is locked away behind these distractions. Imagine the average day of a modern person. They wake up, reach for their phone, check emails, scroll through social media, and start the cycle all over again. Even their free time is filled with a search for something to entertain them, something to fill the void. In this environment, who has time for introspection? Who has the space to be alone with their thoughts? This isn't just an accident. Society has cultivated an environment where pleasure is constant and immediate. But the problem is, pleasure is addictive. And when something becomes addictive, it takes control of us. Rather than choosing where to direct our energy is constantly pulled in every direction by the distractions of the world around us. We no longer direct our lives. They are directed by external forces, the pressures to consume, to entertain, to avoid silence. In this rush for constant distraction, we've lost the ability to be present. And without presence, there is no awareness. Without awareness, there can be no true understanding of ourselves or the world. We're stuck in a cycle, desperately seeking the next hit of dopamine, never pausing long enough to reflect on the cost. We're told to enjoy the moment, to indulge in our desires. Pleasure is marketed as a right, something that should always be within reach. But the paradox of pleasure is that it's fleeting. Once the moment passes, we're left with a sense of emptiness, an insatiable desire for the next rush. In seeking to satisfy our immediate needs, we lose sight of the deeper, more meaningful aspects of life. We sacrifice true freedom in favor of temporary relief. This constant pursuit doesn't lead to freedom. It leads to slavery. The more we seek pleasure, the more we become dependent on it. Pleasure becomes the taskmaster, the invisible force that controls our lives. We are slaves to our desires, and in that slavery, we lose the very thing we're seeking: freedom. We've come to associate freedom with the ability to do whatever we want, whenever we want. The freedom to indulge, to escape, to distract ourselves. But is that true freedom? Or is it just another form of control, another way in which we are manipulated into becoming slaves to our own impulses? Real freedom is not the ability to gratify every desire. True freedom is the ability to resist the call of instant gratification, resist the pull of distractions, resist the temptation to be constantly entertained. It's in the moments of restraint, of silence, of stillness, that we find the freedom to choose our actions and thoughts deliberately. In the space of silence, we come face to face with ourselves, without distractions, without noise. And in that silence, we discover what we truly want, who we truly are. Living for pleasure alone doesn't bring happiness. It brings exhaustion. A life devoted to chasing one pleasure after another leaves us hollow, endlessly seeking something we can never fully possess. The price of a life lived in pursuit of pleasure is a life devoid of depth. It's a life that is only half lived, a shadow of what it could be. To truly live, we must embrace discomfort. We must challenge ourselves, question our desires, and break free from the mindless pursuit of fleeting gratification. Only when we do this can we experience the depth of life, the richness of moments spent in reflection, in solitude, in meaning. To reclaim true freedom, we must learn to be comfortable with silence, with solitude, and with discomfort. We must step away from the constant noise of the world, the distractions that pull us in every direction. In doing so, we find that we are not missing out on life, we are finally living it fully. True freedom comes when we stop being slaves to pleasure and start being masters of our own choices. It's in the ability to say no to the things that don't serve us and yes to the things that do. It's in the power to shape our lives with intention, not by reacting to every desire or demand. In reclaiming this freedom, we also reclaim ourselves. Pleasure is not inherently bad. It's just that when it becomes the sole focus of our lives, it keeps us trapped in a cycle of dependency. The true liberation comes when we step back from this cycle and choose something greater. Real freedom lies not in the endless pursuit of pleasure, but in the power of restraint, the wisdom of silence, and the ability to live with purpose and meaning. In a world that constantly tells us to seek more, to take more, to consume more, the greatest act of rebellion we can make is to resist the call of pleasure and embrace a life of deep reflection, intentional choices, and true freedom. In a world that's constantly evolving and growing in complexity, it seems that the very concept of pleasure has become an ultimate goal, an endpoint, if you will. Yet, is pleasure really the thing that we should be aiming for, or is it merely a fleeting illusion that stands in the way of something far more substantial? In the relentless pursuit of pleasure, we have sacrificed something far more precious: our own agency, the ability to think critically and act with purpose. Pleasure is seductive. It's often disguised as a means of comfort, as a temporary relief from the discomfort of life. And make no mistake, life is uncomfortable at times. It's filled with chaos, confusion, and moments that seem too overwhelming to bear. But we need to ask ourselves, are we truly living when we're simply trying to avoid discomfort, trying to escape into the next hit of pleasure? Are we really living, or are we just existing in a constant state of avoidance? The pursuit of pleasure has been elevated to a kind of cultural creed. It's as if we're told that the ultimate success in life is the number of pleasurable moments we can accumulate, as if pleasure is the sole criterion of fulfillment. But when we look deeper, we see the cracks in this idea. After all, when we consume something pleasurable, we know that it doesn't last. The satisfaction fades and we're left hungry for more. This hunger is insatiable because it's not real nourishment. It's a temporary fix, a band-aid on a wound that won't heal. True fulfillment, then, lies not in the accumulation of pleasure, but in the cultivation of depth. The pursuit of pleasure often leaves us shallow, unable to connect with the deeper currents of life that can truly nourish us. If we want a life of meaning, we must learn how to engage with life in a way that goes beyond the surface. This involves embracing not only the joyous moments, but also the painful, the difficult, the uncomfortable. When we challenge ourselves to step outside the cycle of instant gratification, we open the door to real growth. We allow ourselves to experience discomfort, and in doing so, we begin to see the world from a different perspective. We realize that the discomfort is not something to fear, but something to embrace, because it leads to a deeper understanding of who we are and what we are capable of. The modern world teaches us to run from discomfort, but discomfort is often the crucible in which our true strength is forged. It is through struggle that we gain resilience. It is through challenges that we grow. And it is in the silence, the stillness, and the solitude that we uncover our deepest truths. We often fail to see that discomfort is a tool, a means of transformation. When we learn to sit with discomfort rather than retreating from it, we unlock the power of self-mastery. This is the key to true freedom. Not freedom in the sense of doing whatever we want, whenever we want, but freedom from our own limitations, freedom from the tyranny of our desires, freedom from the constant need for stimulation. The great paradox is that in resisting the lure of constant pleasure, we discover a freedom that is far more profound. This kind of freedom allows us to live life on our own terms. It gives us the ability to say no when we need to, and yes when it matters. It empowers us to make choices based on our deeper values, not the fleeting impulses of the moment. If this is all making sense to you, hit the subscribe button and join the paradox theory. Thank you. It's easy to get lost in the noise of the world, the distractions, the demands, the constant pull toward pleasure. But when we allow ourselves to step back and examine our lives, we begin to see that true happiness isn't found in the pursuit of pleasure. It's found in the pursuit of meaning. Meaning, unlike pleasure, doesn't fade away once it's consumed. Meaning endures, providing us with a sense of purpose, a foundation upon which we can build our lives. The search for meaning is not a comfortable pursuit. It's not always easy or pleasurable, but it is infinitely more rewarding. It asks us to confront our deepest fears, to challenge our assumptions, to face the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. It requires us to dig deep, to ask the hard questions, and to be open to the answers, even when those answers are uncomfortable. In our society, we are conditioned to seek comfort, to avoid pain, to do everything we can to escape the hardships of life. But life itself is inherently difficult. We can't avoid it. We can't hide from it forever. And yet, in our attempts to avoid discomfort, we miss the opportunity to grow, to transform, to become something greater than we were before. The key to freedom, then, is not avoiding discomfort. It's learning how to navigate it. It's about developing the strength to face life's difficulties with courage and grace. It's about finding peace, not in the absence of struggle, but in the ability to face that struggle without being overwhelmed by it. When we learn to embrace discomfort, we no longer live in fear of it. We can walk through the trials of life with confidence, knowing that each challenge is an opportunity for growth. But even in the face of discomfort, there's a choice to be made. We can choose to surrender to the distractions of the world, allowing them to numb us to the pain. Or we can choose to confront the pain head-on, using it as a catalyst for transformation. We can choose to live in the shallow end, constantly seeking pleasure, or we can choose to dive deep into the depths of life, where the real treasure lies. The superficial pleasures of life are fleeting, but the rewards of introspection, of self-discovery, and of growth are lasting. They provide us with a sense of fulfillment that no amount of pleasure can give us. When we seek meaning, we find purpose. When we embrace discomfort, we find strength. And when we resist the pull of constant distraction, we find peace. The path to true freedom is not easy. It's not a path that's lined with comforts or pleasures, but it's the only path that leads to real liberation, the kind of liberation that comes from mastering ourselves, from becoming the kind of people who can live with intention and purpose, regardless of the external circumstances. Freedom, in its truest sense, is not about doing whatever we want. It's about having the power to choose what we want to do, and to do it with conviction. It's about being able to say no to the things that don't serve us, and yes to the things that truly matter. It's about living in a way that is aligned with our deepest values, not swayed by the distractions of the world around us. This is the kind of freedom that brings peace. This is the kind of freedom that brings joy. And this is the kind of freedom that allows us to live a life of meaning, a life that's not defined by the pleasure we can accumulate, but by the depth and richness of our experiences. As we continue to challenge ourselves, to resist the allure of constant pleasure, and to embrace the discomforts of life, we will begin to uncover a sense of freedom and fulfillment that we never thought possible. we will come to realize that the true treasures of life aren't found in pleasure, but in the moments of stillness, in the moments of struggle, and in the moments of reflection that allow us to become the best versions of ourselves. And in that discovery, we will find that freedom, true freedom, lies not in the absence of difficulty, but in the ability to rise above it, to live a life of purpose, of intention, and of meaning. The idea of constant pleasure is seductive. It entices us with the promise of fulfillment, of relief from the mundane struggles of daily life. But when we follow this path, we often end up feeling emptier than when we started. Each fleeting moment of joy quickly fades, and we are left yearning for more. It's as if we've been chasing an illusion, one that leaves us perpetually unsatisfied and constantly seeking. This relentless cycle of chasing fleeting moments of pleasure is ultimately unsustainable. Our society has placed such a heavy emphasis on seeking pleasure that we have forgotten the deeper truths about what it means to live well. The constant chase for pleasure has led us to overlook the importance of self-discipline, patience, and introspection. We've come to believe that freedom means the ability to pursue whatever brings us temporary satisfaction. But true freedom is not about indulgence. It's about self-mastery. True freedom lies in the ability to choose our actions, not because they offer immediate gratification, but because they align with our deeper values. The freedom that comes with restraint is a freedom rooted in self-awareness and self-control. It's the kind of freedom that allows us to make choices that contribute to our growth, to our development, and to our sense of purpose in life. When we allow ourselves to be swept up in the pursuit of pleasure, we lose sight of our true selves. We become slaves to our desires, to the impulses that constantly demand our attention. But when we step back and examine our desires, when we resist the urge to act on every impulse, we begin to regain control. We become the masters of our own actions, not controlled by the whims of our desires. This doesn't mean that we must reject all forms of pleasure or joy. Pleasure, in moderation, is a natural part of life, and there is value in experiencing the beauty and richness that the world has to offer. But when pleasure becomes the ultimate goal, when it becomes the sole focus of our lives, we end up chasing something that is ultimately hollow and unfulfilling. True freedom comes when we learn to engage with life in a way that is not driven by the need for constant pleasure. In embracing this kind of freedom, we discover that true happiness does not come from the fleeting joys of external experiences. Instead, it comes from the deeper satisfaction of living in alignment with our values. When we live intentionally, when we act with purpose, we begin to cultivate a sense of fulfillment that goes beyond temporary pleasure. This process requires us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves. It asks us to examine our motives and desires, to question whether the things we pursue truly serve our greater good. Are we chasing pleasure because we genuinely desire it, or are we using it as a distraction, a way to avoid the discomforts of life? When we stop to reflect, we often realize that much of our pursuit of pleasure is driven by a deep-seated fear. Fear of discomfort, fear of confrontation, fear of the unknown. But the truth is that discomfort is not something to fear. Discomfort is the crucible in which transformation occurs. It is through discomfort that we are forced to grow, to evolve, and to become stronger versions of ourselves. The pursuit of comfort and pleasure is a path that leads to stagnation. It is only when we step out of our comfort zones, when we face the discomforts of life head-on, that we truly begin to grow. Growth requires struggle. It requires effort. It requires us to push through moments of discomfort, to persevere when things are tough. It requires us to take risks, to face the unknown, and to embrace the uncertainty that comes with change. Without struggle, there can be no growth. Without discomfort, there can be no transformation. The modern world often tells us that we should avoid discomfort at all costs. We are bombarded with messages that encourage us to seek comfort, to indulge in pleasure, and to avoid anything that feels difficult or challenging. But if we look closely, we see that this constant pursuit of comfort has left us spiritually bankrupt. We may have more than ever before in terms of material wealth and convenience, but we have become disconnected from the deeper aspects of life that truly bring fulfillment. In a world obsessed with pleasure and comfort, we must remind ourselves that the pursuit of meaning is what truly matters. Meaning, unlike pleasure, doesn't fade away when we experience it. Meaning endures. It gives us a sense of purpose, a reason to wake up each day and face the challenges that life presents. It provides us with the foundation we need to navigate the difficulties of life with grace and resilience. The search for meaning is not an easy path. It is not a path that promises immediate gratification or instant results. It requires patience, perseverance, and a willingness to confront difficult truths about ourselves. But it is through this search for meaning that we find true fulfillment. It is in the pursuit of something greater than ourselves that we find purpose, and it is in the pursuit of purpose that we find true happiness. Meaning is not something that can be found in the external world. It is not something that can be bought or consumed. Meaning comes from within. It comes from the choices we make, the actions we take, and the way we live our lives. It comes from the relationships we build, the challenges we overcome, and the growth we experience. When we stop chasing pleasure and begin to focus on meaning, we shift our perspective. We no longer see life as a series of moments to be filled with pleasure, but as an ongoing journey of discovery, growth, and transformation. We realize that the true value of life lies not in the things we accumulate or the experiences we collect, but in the person we become along the way. Living a life of meaning requires that we embrace the discomforts of life. It requires us to confront the hardships and challenges that come our way with courage and determination. It requires us to let go of the need for constant pleasure and instant gratification, and to embrace the deeper satisfaction that comes from living in alignment with our values. This is the true path to freedom, the freedom to live authentically, to act with purpose, and to embrace life's challenges with confidence and grace. It is not a freedom that comes from the absence of difficulty, but from the ability to rise above it. It is the freedom to choose our actions, to shape our own destiny, and to live a life that is meaningful and fulfilling. The pursuit of pleasure may provide temporary relief, but it will never lead to lasting fulfillment. Only when we begin to embrace discomfort, when we step outside the cycle of instant gratification, do we open ourselves up to the deeper rewards of life. The rewards that come from living with purpose, from facing life's challenges with resilience, and from cultivating the strength to rise above the distractions of the world. In embracing discomfort and searching for meaning, we find that true happiness is not something that comes from external sources, but from within. It is the product of living with intention, of making choices that align with our values, and of embracing the challenges and struggles that come our way. True freedom, then, is the freedom to live authentically. It is the freedom to choose our own path, to confront life's difficulties with courage, and to cultivate a sense of fulfillment that is not dependent on fleeting moments of pleasure, but on the deeper satisfaction that comes from living a life of purpose and meaning. When we step back from the constant chase for pleasure and begin to focus on what truly matters, we begin to uncover a sense of freedom and fulfillment that we never thought possible. It is in the pursuit of meaning that we find true freedom. The freedom to live a life that is ours, to live it on our own terms, and to live it with intention and purpose. This is the kind of freedom that allows us to experience the richness of life, not the surface pleasures, but the deep, abiding joy that comes from living a life that is aligned with who we truly are. As we continue on this path, we must remember that the pursuit of pleasure is not inherently wrong. It's when pleasure becomes the sole focus, the ultimate goal, that it leads us astray. True fulfillment comes from a deeper place, from a commitment to live with purpose, to confront the discomforts of life, and to embrace the struggle that leads to growth and transformation. Only then can we experience the freedom that comes from living authentically, the freedom to be fully ourselves, unburdened by the distractions and illusions that so often cloud our judgment. And so must we. Before you go, I want to hear from you. What is one thing you know you need to let go of, but haven't yet? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read your experiences and reflections. And if this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe. It's important, much more than you imagine. And trust me, the journey we're on together is just getting started. The next videos are going to go even deeper, so stick around. You won't want to miss what's coming next. See you soon.